Hello and to the Club Dub podcast presented by SportsMockery.com. Been a couple weeks. Glad to be back with you guys. Eric and Kevin starting things off. Drew Tech checking into his hotel. He's a traveling working man, so he'll be joining us in just a few moments. But we're glad to have you guys here again. We are presented by SportsMockery.com. It's been a busy couple weeks for the Bears. OTAs. We got Robert Quinn trade rumors, and reportedly he wants out. And we got more Justin Fields leadership coming across. Let's get it all going here today, Eric. But first, before we get going, how's everything been last couple of weeks here? And been pumping out the articles, and like to hear how things are over with you.
Everything's going good with me, staying on top of everything with the Bears. A lot of stuff happening in terms of, the practices, everything coming together with the schemes and whatnot, maybe some more, roster maneuvering in the coming future, depending on what happens. So, still pretty exciting stuff despite it being summer.
Yeah, no kidding. Exciting stuff, too, for a team that's been ranked, I've seen 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st best team, 32nd best team in the NFL this year. Team that's going to have the number one overall draft pick next year. I can't believe we're already talking draft for 2023, but that's the thing about the NFL. It's a year-round sport, and the Bears have not had any friends in the national media, and we're going to go over all that. Justin Fields alike has had no friends in the national media so far. A lot of them, I believe, it's more so I should say the Ryan Poles doesn't have the friends. They don't believe that he's put the weapons around Fields, but I think us three are going to have some different takes on that tonight. So I'm excited to get into that. Excited to get into the schedule as well. It's a much easier schedule than last year. Granted, team is probably not going to be as good as it was last year. We'll see. Maybe we could be wrong on that. A lot of players departing, going to have a lot of new faces. I wrote in the initial couple paragraphs to start the description of this show. I think and I've given this a lot of thought. I think there's about five players on this team that are proven, five starters, I should say, that are proven like veteran talents that have, potential to make the Pro Bowl this year.
Mm-hmm.
Those 17 other positions are up for grabs, and I kind of want to dig into what you guys have to think about that. But let's talk OTAs because that's what's going on right now. Saw a couple videos the first week when they started last Monday. We saw the new look secondary, Kyler Gordon already impressing. And I guess for you, you've been following these pressers a little bit closer than I have. So other big takeaways so far, besides from Justin Fields and his leadership, because we'll get into that and him looking at the playbook at 12:30 at night and all that other stuff. But what have you been? What can we take away from OTAs? Because really, it's a lot of we believe in our guys, and 4 months out of the season, how much of that really makes sense?
Sure, it's always optimism season this time of year. You expect that sort of thing, but it sounds like initially, in terms of the offensive side of the ball, that they're encouraged by what they have in Jenkins and Borum at the tackle positions. There was some skepticism earlier this year because it was a new regime coming in, new offensive line coach, new GM, all that sort of stuff. So they weren't really sure what they had in Jenkins and Borum. And, even though they haven't gotten into pads yet, so they haven't really been able to see in that way, they're encouraged by their work ethic, their commitment to doing what is necessary in this new offense. And it would sort of be explained in that they really haven't made any significant moves at the tackle position. That all they did was sign a couple of swing veterans who are probably going to be backups, and also drafted a 5th-round pick. And that's pretty much it that they've done. So they haven't made any significant moves, which tells you that they are willing to trust Borum and Jenkins going into training camp at least to, sort of hold down those starting jobs. And if that happens, that's a good thing for the Bears. It's one less thing to worry about, hopefully. And then, if they play well, even better. If not, then the Bears will know, okay, we're going to have to start thinking about, fixing those two spots next year, or one of them at least. So that was
and that's
encouraging.
a nice thing. I was going to say that's a nice thing too about having OTAs when they are right now, and when we get post June 1st, there's going to be some available guys. There is every single year. I mean, we've seen a couple casualties for the Bears over the last couple of years of veteran, noticeable guys who get cut. So I still see them picking up, a lineman or two. I don't know if it'll be anybody of note, but it'll definitely be, I think at least 1 to 2 names for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if it's going to be a tackle. I think they're probably comfortable with what they have there right now. I think it's actually going to be interior. I think they really need to look at the guard position in terms of finding some help. You look at left guard, you've got Cody Whitehair. That's good. You've got a solid starter. He's going to, hold down that position. The problem is at right guard, because you have no idea what you have there right now, because James Daniels is gone. I've seen some people project Dakota Dozier as their starter at right guard, which is a huge problem considering how poorly he played in Minnesota.
No thanks.
And then if it's not him, it's probably going to be one of their rookies like Zachary Thomas, maybe Jatir Carter, depending on who plays well in camp, which is fine if they play well. But this feels like a situation that would be perfect to get, if not a big name veteran, then at least a solid veteran that can come in and compete. And maybe he can hold that position down until one of those rookies, knows the system a little bit better and might be able to step in later in the season. So I think that's going to be the position you want to watch in terms of them making a move later in training camp or probably towards final cuts at the end of the preseason.
Speaking of rookies that may know the system, we got a guy. His name's Drew Cole, and he's back. Welcome in, Drew. What's up, my guy? How are you?
Doing well, guys. How are you?
Good. We're talking a little OTAs, a lot of Bears news, a lot of Justin Fields news, leadership, schedules out. It's been a couple weeks since we've been able to get this going. So, we're chatting right now about OTAs, and we're about, what's today, the 23rd. So 9 days away here from the June 1st and post-June cuts, which could potentially add to the offensive side of the ball. It just feels like this team's just going to operate this year on small contracts, lightning in a bottle receivers, go out, get some stopgap O linemen. And I think there's going to hopefully be 1 to 2 guys, especially on the offensive line that we were just talking about, that are going to be available, post-June. I feel like there always is a few because these teams like to get younger, especially teams trying to shed cap. And Bears are in a great cap situation for next year, obviously number 1 in the league. But Drew, do you see it the same way we do? You think a couple guards?
100%. And in fact, you look at the Bears offensive line, a lot's been made about the offensive line coming into the season. But you think about how some of the positions might flesh themselves out. You look at Tevin Jenkins almost certainly has a role, probably at right tackle. Looks like Larry Borum is really impressing. It's possible he may be at left tackle or maybe one of the guard spots. You have Lucas Patrick at center. Those are 3 spots done right there. Cody Whitehair at left guard, at least for this year. If not next year, depending on how he plays, but he's solidified there for now. And then you're really only looking at right guard as the potential open spot. Then plus, obviously, you have your depth position. So the Bears offensive line's coming together. And yes, I expect a lot of interesting names to be available here after June 1st. Usually someone of starting quality is available after this time. So I expect the Bears to be certainly looking around, seeing if there's anyone that they can find that could maybe be a 2 to 3 year commitment, potentially at least a 1 year commitment for this year to come in and compete. So plenty of opportunity here for offensive linemen, possibly more receivers, maybe some linebackers. So I expect some more competition here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, Eric, I was going to ask if you heard any like names, any significant names that could, come in here for a year or two. I know we heard a little bit about what's his face played for the Chiefs last year or was cut by the Chiefs. I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Eric Fisher?
Yes, I don't know why. Yeah, couldn't think of his name. Mm-hmm. Eric Fisher, we've heard that name a few times.
Dwayne Brown is still out there. You got Nate Solder, although he's probably washed at this point. Yeah. So you got some tackle options. The guard options are a little bit thinner, in my opinion. It's really not a great market right now, although guards can become available much faster than left tackles and right tackles. And you have to remember, back in 2016, the Bears got Josh Sitton really late in off-season before the season started, and he ended up being a Pro Bowler. So this sort of stuff happens more often than you think. It's just a question of being patient, waiting for your opportunity, and then pouncing when it comes up. And I think that's what the Bears are doing. I think somebody's going to become available, and the Bears are probably going to get him at a decent price, even if it's for just 1 year, and they're going to be able to plug him in. He'll play, and he'll be able to at least keep the line solidified until they can find a more long-term option next year.
That's a great call on Josh Sitton. I totally forgot all about him. You know what comes to mind when I think of Josh Sitton, too? It's that picture from Dumb and Dumber, him and Kyle Long with the orange and blue suits. I'll see if I can find a picture of that by the end of the show, but that is a classic.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic.
So, but let's talk about a position that I think we know the starting 2 guys now. And Kyler Gordon impressing already. I want to use the word impressing with almost like quotations around there because let's be honest, OTAs it's OTAs. It's optional. You can't get a feel for what a guy's actually going to do on the field until he's in pads and playing against another team, which it doesn't sound the Bears are going to have these preseason practices against another team, which I found to be very surprising and interesting. But that's beside the point. Kyler Gordon, from what we've seen the brief couple weeks here, he's made a couple nice plays in practice. The media seems to like him already. And then Matt Eberflus has spoke leaps and bounds about the guy. So real quick before we get in our takes, I want to let's hear from the head coach on what he had to say about the 39th overall pick, Kyler Gordon.
Jaylon Johnson, I know you said he's a young player, he's going into his third year, he's probably got things you'd like to see him work on. Is there anything that you do as a coach that you can kind of time up the development of a Kyler Gordon who's just coming in? He's probably got a lot to learn. And someone who still is a young player in Jaylon, is there stuff that you do to try to get them on the same page at the same time in terms of development, skills?
Yeah, I just think you coach them. You're coaching those guys. They play the same position. Kyler's been lighting it up the last 2 days. I'll just tell you that. The guy's got tremendous ball skills. He's been playing the defense the right way. And we're very impressed with him. I'll just tell you that. And he's doing a good job the first 2 days. We'll see where it goes. He's young. He's got a lot to learn, but we are excited where he is with his ball hawking skills, no question.
Well, there you go. I mean, that right away is huge here. The ball hawking skills is going to be so key for this team. This team couldn't take the ball away last year. I mean, it was pathetic. I mean, they had – I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was a very bad secondary overall. I know Jaylon took exception to that when he was asked about that by a couple guys. But let's be honest here. Let's be fair, balanced, and honest. That secondary was terrible. They couldn't take the ball away. Justin Fields had long fields pretty much every possession. Only a couple on the other side of the ball or on the other side of the 50. So this is really nice to hear. It's still early, but I'm excited. This was a position of need, and I'm liking the pick more and more. I hear Eberflus talk about it, but I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid yet until I actually see it happen. Okay, I'm just saying I'm a little excited. I'm not all the way,
And one of the things that's interesting about this is that obviously with OTAs, there's no pads, no nothing, so things have to be taken with a grain of salt. But I think two things can be identified and scouted during this time. One is obviously ball skills, things like catching the ball and making plays on the ball. That doesn't necessarily go away when the pads are on. And the second thing is body control. And I think that one was a very interesting way of phrasing. You look at Kyler Gordon's background. He has a dance background, some martial arts background. I can't remember which one exactly, but that all very important in helping build some of that body control, footwork, all those things that are very important at the cornerback position. And that was apparently showing up in OTAs, which is really interesting. I also thought the dichotomy in which he was effusive in his praise for Kyler Gordon, whereas for Jaylon Johnson, who by everyone's, measurements was cornerback 1 last year, played really well, matched up pretty well against most number 1 wide receivers. And the reaction was almost like, yeah, he's a guy. He's good. He's fine. He's here and he's competing and he has a lot to learn. Yes, a part of it obviously is that they're inheriting Jaylon Johnson, but for a guy who I think Bears fans are counting on being that CB1, right? And certainly Bears fans have been looking at him with rose-colored glasses for good reason. He's been a very good player in his first 2 years. I thought it was very interesting that Eberflus was just very neutral when it came to Johnson, and part of it might have been him not showing up to voluntary minicamp, but it's just, or at least arriving late. But I thought that was fascinating. I don't know what they think of him and if they want to pay him after next year.
I think a lot of that has to do with, you have to remember the perspective that Eberflus is taking with this. He's not just a defensive-minded guy. He's a takeaways-minded guy. Mm-hmm. He always sees it through that lens. And Kyler Gordon has good ball skills, as we've already mentioned. But Jaylon Johnson only has 1 interception in 2 years. And that's what Eberflus sees when he thinks about Jaylon Johnson. If he wants to be considered a good corner in this defense, you got to start taking the football away. So I think that's why he's sort of keeping this neutral stance. He's sending Johnson a message like, look, it's good that you have good coverage skills. It's good that you can tackle. That's all important. But I want to start to see you take the ball away. And I think everybody else wants to see the same thing. They feel that's the one thing that's sort of holding Johnson back from being called a great corner rather than just a good one. So that's something I'm really excited to see as he sort of meshes with this new defense.
Well said.
Let's hear from number 33.
Yeah. You came in, you contributed early, kind of, proved yourself to the previous regime. Do you feel like you're starting over and got to prove yourself to this coaching staff, too, to let them know that you are as valuable a player as I'm sure you deem yourself to be?
100%. I mean, that's my mindset now moving forward. I mean, it's a complete reset. Everything I've done in the past with the other coaches, with the other staff, I mean, it really doesn't mean anything too much. I mean, the film, not going to lie to you, but at the end of the day, they want me to show them what I can do in person moving forward.
Yeah, I'm sure impressed. They banking on you like to be elite player in this league, and we just talked to Coach Eberflus a minute ago, and he was talking about, obviously he highlighted things that he thinks you can do well, but he talked about things that he thinks you need to improve on, as opposed to when he spoke about Kyler. He was like very, very, positive, and he's been praising him. I'm not saying he thinks that he's a better player than you, but I think the expectation on you is a little bit different. Do you feel that pressure? Well, how's that process been in terms of getting to know your new coaches?
I don't feel anything.
What are your impressions of the new defense, and how well do you feel that your skill set fits into what they want you to do?
How do I feel? I mean, it's definitely different from what we're used to running here in the past. But, I mean, I feel like it gives us a lot more opportunities to see the quarterback, to make plays on the ball. So, I mean, definitely got to learn the system, learn the communication, learn the verbiage. And I feel like that's going to be big, especially for the secondary. So, I mean, we were in the system that we had last year, and we still have some mental errors. So, I mean, I definitely think we need to do some extra studying, just be on one accord better this year, being able to communicate and play the zones a lot better than we did last year.
You can feel the chip on his shoulder almost when he makes those comments. He goes, "Yeah, he's good. I know I haven't gotten the comments. I know I haven't gotten the compliments, but I'm going to be ready. I've been in this league 3 years now. This will be my 3rd year." And let's take this for what it is too. Remember last year? I know, I don't know if either of you on Instagram or not. I would assume no, neither one. Okay. So Davante Adams posted photos last year, pretty much after a couple of games here and there, some big ones. He posted one against the Bears, and I remember one of the pictures was Jaylon Johnson. Tagged Jaylon Johnson in the photo, and Jaylon commented and goes, "Always a pleasure to go up against one of the best." And he made his own post, I believe. And Davante commented back and goes, "You're a really young, bright star," something along those lines. I'm not exactly sure what he said. So he's gained respect from the best receiver in football. He guarded him pretty well, as best as you can with Davante. And he's had that against other guys too that he's had to play against. So this is a lockdown cornerback. It's just, will he fit the Eberflus principle of wanting to take the ball away? I think that's what it comes down to. And if that's the way Matt wants to run this team, and he's like, takeaways are everything, then I could see him maybe Jalen's not that guy, because that's not really Jalen's game. Anyway, he's one of the 5 guys I put into the paragraph to start this game as a guy who could be a Pro Bowl candidate this year on this team. He's one of those for sure starters, no doubt, could have a really good year. He's had 2 really good years in a row. So I just wanted to say that it's possible that maybe he's going to have to work even harder to kind of gain a little bit more of a trust within this new regime, especially, still being on a rookie deal and being expendable.
I mean, it wouldn't shock me. I think he's ultimately going to win them over. He's that kind of player. He's a grinder, and he's able to adjust to his surroundings, and he's a good player. You usually don't want to get rid of good players, especially at his age. He's really young. People forget that. So I'm not too worried about that, but it also wouldn't shock me that if he doesn't fit the mentality of what they want in the takeaway mindset and whatnot, they could easily trade him and get a solid pick for him in return, or even a couple of picks, because, that's the way Ryan Poles thinks. He's always thinking about finding ways to add draft picks and sort of stockpile that young talent. So if somebody's really willing to pay a really nice premium for a young corner like Johnson, I'm sure they'd listen if they feel that he's not the best fit for the type of defense that they want to run. But I'm not too worried about it. I think he's going to fit in just fine. I think he'll fit in just fine, and they'll have a good, really solid young pair of corners moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be room in the NFL for most teams for a young cornerback who can play sticky man coverage and do that really well. I mean, in today's NFL, that's very important, and it'd be almost I want to say an indictment if Matt Eberflus's defense can't use a corner of Jaylon Johnson's caliber. So obviously, I understand the takeaways need to improve. I mean, that just goes across the board for the Bears defense. But I'm hoping that a corner of Jaylon Johnson's skills has a place in this defense, even if the takeaway numbers aren't what Eberflus hopes. Whenever you can have someone that you can trust to play man and more or less shut down most of the receivers in the NFL, unless you have like some elite scheme going on, which the Packers clearly did for Devontae Adams. There's got to be room for that. So I'm hoping that they're able to make it fit. But otherwise, I mean, if there is, assuming Kyler Gordon is the real deal, assuming you have Jaylon Johnson on the other end, you have two very, very good cornerbacks there who could, if all goes well, lock down that spot for the next decade.
Justin Fields has been making a lot of headlines, as he's going to do, being the quarterback number one here in Chicago, being a rookie going into his second year, new regime. He's got a lot to deal with here as a 23-year-old now. Did he turn 23 or is he still 22? 23-year-old.
23,
so
yeah.
it's quite a lot to deal with for him. And he's been in a lot of news cycles across national media saying he doesn't have enough help. He's not getting this. He's not getting that. But again, while I agree, I like to find a middle ground with a lot of these reports because I do agree that he has a bottom 5 receiver room in the league on paper. But guess what? Darnell Mooney is back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. That doesn't happen a lot in Bears history. And with a new regime, with a guy from a proven system, you're looking at a pretty darn good wide receiver one coming into this year. I'm pretty confident in that. It's the other pieces that I'm worried about. Can Byron Pringle be a good wide receiver too? Because that's what he is right now. Velus Jones is going to be that plug and play, throw him around, see if he can, jet sweep. He's going to be the kind of the move around piece. And then your tight ends, can they catch the ball in the end zone? I mean, it's just no production from that position over the last couple of seasons. I like what Fields had to say about his guys. We don't have an Odell. We don't have
Cooper Kupp.
Who did he say? Hopkins, right?
Kupp.
Yeah, we don't have Kupp and we don't have Odell. We don't have a guy like that. But, we got guys that are going to come in and play in a new system. I felt like our system really wasn't. He's more comfortable in this one. He's been on record saying that. And he felt like the culture, this was the new article that came out this morning. I didn't feel like the culture was there last year. So while I don't really enjoy him talking about last year anymore, I'm done with that. I want to hear more about this year. I do enjoy the leadership that he said about, listen, we got guys that are going to come out and play. And it's refreshing to hear that. I know a lot of quarterbacks will always back their guys. Again, it's OTAs. You got to take things with a grain of salt. But regardless, leadership is leadership, and we're kind of seeing the behind the scenes of him doing it too. I mean, one of his friends in his photog is posting photos of him late at night watching film on his couch at like 12:30. Him and Mooney have spent time in 12:30, 1 a.m. in the practice facility going over plays and things like that. While all of that is cheesy and it makes for a good story, I think it's legit with this kid. I really do.
It's one of those things that he's really got to do. I mean, if he wanted to be the undisputed leader, quarterback one of this team, these are the kinds of things he has to say to the media. So I'm not surprised he's doing that. He should be doing that. That's great. That being said, I really, and I've been saying this since, free agency started, I really do think he has good reason to feel the way he does. The Bears wide receivers, I know they're not, star power names. Everyone was like, oh, they lost Allen Robinson. What was Allen Robinson doing last year? Byron Pringle had a better season than he did, and he was a wide receiver 4 on the Chiefs. So like these are things where I think the Bears' depth has really improved. Pringle is a bona fide wide receiver in this league. Velus Jones, I am very excited about what they can do with him. I think his production is going to come more from smart schematics from Luke Getsy rather than him kind of route running himself open. I don't think he's ready to do that in year one, but I think he's a legitimate piece that they can deploy on Sunday starting in week 1. Equinemius St. Brown, I mean, I know we laugh at that post, but I really do think that he has game to play a decent role as the X in this offense. And then they have plenty of guys competing for spots. You have David Moore coming in to compete. You have Isaiah Coulter, several other names. They're not coming off the top of my head.
You still have Daz Newsome too.
Daz Newsome, intriguing names that kind of make up the bottom of the roster, which, I mean, these guys would have been wide receiver 4s last year in this offense, and I think Bears fans would have been happy with that. There are pieces here. And yes, I think it's very clear that the Bears, Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus, Luke Getsy, they expect the number one uplift in this offense to come from the scheme and from Fields himself. And those two have to make the difference to enable these guys, to these wide receivers, to be those pieces that they can plug into this offense. The tight ends have to take that next step. They will and they should, but a lot of it's going to come from the scheme and from Fields taking that next step himself, and they can and should. And if they don't, then the Bears have they're in a lot of trouble.
Well, they'll have a top 3 pick then if they don't.
Exactly. So I think the Bears' approach to this is good. I think it's solid. I think the Bears have better pieces than Bears fans feel like they do. But yeah, they got to prove it on Sundays.
And the thing you have to think about this wide receiver core is how sort of versatile it is and it has become. You have your vertical receiver in Darnell Mooney. There's no question of that. And then you have a really good slot target in Byron Pringle. He'll fill that role great. And then now you've got that Deebo Samuel, Percy Harvin type with Velus Jones. So you've got guys who can do all sorts of different things in different ways. And that's hard to defend. And then you've got other guys like veteran Tajay Sharp, who might be a bit underrated. He's another one of those slot types who can really work the interior of the field. He can be dangerous, long arms, good catch radius. Dante Pettis, I think he has punt return value that really hasn't been exploited in the league, over his first few seasons, which is unusual to me. He might have some, untapped potential. And then you've got Daz, you've got all those younger guys who will be fighting for spots. So I think they've built a lot of great competition, and I think they're going to end up with a lot of good depth when it's all said and done. Yes, there's not a lot of star power and name value, but if these guys are used the right way by this coaching staff, I think they can be productive, maybe not superstar productive, but, productive enough to make this team effective. In addition to the fact, all the top 3 guys that they have now in Jones, Darnell, and Pringle, they're all also willing blockers. So they'll be a big help in the running game as well. That's something that you need to keep in mind as well, because they're going to be a run-first team with this wide zone concept. So they have a plan, and that much has become clear from the moves that they've been making. It might not be, acquire every, superstar in sight that you can, but it seems they have a cohesive identity that they're trying to build, and that's something that they really haven't had under the Matt Nagy regime.
Right, and I want to believe that there's been a ton of talk about Velus Jones Jr., and I want to believe that he's got the intangibles to be like that, the guy that they can move all over the field and stuff. But he's a rookie and stuff. Can we really? People are putting these names on him like Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel might be the most effective offensive player in the National Football League. I mean, putting a name, I get the type of guy they want him to be, but it took him even a couple of years to get to that point and be as amazing as he is now and with the coach that he is now. So I think that, again, I just want to talk Bears fans back just a bit. Velus Jones Jr. I don't think is going to be as bad as people think, but I think throwing the name Deebo Samuel around it sets up a lot. It sets up a lot of us for getting our hearts broke on Sundays.
Yeah, and I think like everyone wants. First of all, everyone kind of, they fall for the easy comp because it's there, right? Yes. And I think like people are assuming that because Luke Getsy's background is partially in the Shanahan LaFleur offense, that this offense will automatically become good, right? Because it's that scheme, it will be good. Like there are things that has to happen. Getsy needs to find himself as a play caller, and I hate the term "find yourself," but it's real. Like he has to do that. He's never done this before. He's never coordinated an offense before. Fields had a miserable rookie season, and he's done a lot of work. And credit to him. I think his release looks quicker. All that looks good. I think the mechanics will be improved. All these things that had to happen to have the offense look better. I know that everyone is so focused on, if the wide receivers are there, then Fields will be good. No, a lot of this depends on Fields. A lot of this depends on Getsy. A lot of this depends on the wide receivers. In fact, the wide receivers are actually probably the most proven players on this offense right now. If you think about it, like Mooney has, cachet to his name. Pringle has cachet to his name. I mean, Fields doesn't. Getsy doesn't as a play caller. So the offensive line has a lot to prove. So I think Bears fans are just very, very nervous about Fields not taking that next step because they're so convinced that he is that prospect. And maybe he will be, and I hope he will be. But there's a lot that needs to happen for this to work. It's not just about, hey, where are the great name wide receivers, plug them in, and everything's going to be great. There's a lot of things that need to happen, and that's that process over the next several months.
Let's hear what Justin's new center, Lucas Patrick, also a product of the Green Bay Luke Getsy regimes up there. Let's hear what he had to say about his quarterback.
You started working with Justin last month. What have been your impressions of him? Would you say as a player, a teammate, and also as a person?
Fast. Yeah, he can get moving pretty quick. No, he's a fun guy. He's young, so he likes to have the juice and the energy, and he's got a live arm. I mean, there were a few throws he made today where that ball just, it's like it keeps getting faster in the air, and he's soaking everything up. Like whether it's coaches, me, or stuff he's telling me. I mean, it's really good. I mean, he's couldn't have a better start to a working relationship.
It sounds like is he almost beyond your expectations of what you thought out of him in terms of his arm and the things you were just.
I mean, I have pretty high expectations. You don't get drafted as high as he does, in the National Football League just for, kind of having a wet noodle or slow feet. Like he's really talented. I thought he was going to be really good, and he's exceeding my expectations.
It's great. It's great.
Nice to hear. Again, exceeding my expectations through a couple of weeks. I can't imagine that those expectations through those couple of weeks were very high, but then again, they could be. We don't know. Also, I just want to point out a fun fact: Lucas Patrick looks like just a football player, like offensive lineman, football, corn-fed dude from Iowa. That's exactly what Lucas Patrick looks like. He looks like a guy that just is going to get things done in the trenches. I don't know. Probably I'm wrong. He's got that look to him. I don't know.
I mean, Ryan Poles identified a type, right? He wants, certain types of like muscle density and lean and cut, like muscle to fat ratio and all this stuff. And then he wants like football players, and that's what he looks like. You're right. I mean, The Bears have really identified a type this offseason and gone for it. And I think it reflects in their roster. And Lucas Patrick is, I think, going to be an awesome addition. So I'm very excited about him.
I think Poles pretty much pointed it out from his comments about Patrick. He wants pricks, and Patrick is a prick on Sundays. He wants guys that play with that nasty mentality through the echo of the whistle. He wants them to be tone setters. Yep. And that's what the Bears really haven't been on the offensive side of the ball for a long time. I mean, I'll never forget the comment by Chris Long when he was talking to his brother about the Bears after that 2018 playoff loss. Do you think that we could have won the Super Bowl had we gotten past you? And Chris immediately said no, because you guys weren't physical enough. Yep. And that always stuck with me. So, once Poles came in with that mentality, like, look, we're going to become a much more physical football team, especially up front. I was like, okay, he gets it. He understands that. Don't be fooled by this finesse type offense that they have in Kansas City. They were a physical team up front when they won the Super Bowl in 19, and especially last year when they retooled their offensive line. So he wants that mentality. He believes that mentality fits Chicago especially, which is very true. So I really like that he has that identity in mind in terms of what he wants to build up front.
It's also interesting to me, and this is kind of off topic a little bit, but like, how do you become an offensive lineman in the NFL? Someone who is scouted and like your traits are identified if you are not physical, if you're not tough. Like, what coach looks at that and says, you know what? That's okay. I want that for my football team. Like, how in the NFL? Like, how have you gone through high school, college, now the NFL, several years in some of these cases, and you're not physical enough for several of these teams? Like, it doesn't compute for me. But
I don't know. I have a lot of friends who played. Not a lot of friends. I have a handful of friends who played like D3 college football and were all everything in high school. Like, very good, very strong individuals. And they always tell me about growing up playing football and stuff. And even on the high school field, I mean, fights, sticking hands in people's like face masks and ripping dudes down and saying some of the worst things that you could say to another human being at the bottom of these piles. Like, I firmly believe that. Oh, yeah. And it's right. How do you get to the next level without doing that? Like, that's, I don't know. I'm 5'8", 5'9". On a good day, I would have never been able to make it as a lineman, let alone in the game of football. But I can't imagine going through all of those years and being like, oh, I'm just going to be a nice guy. Like, no, you can't be. There's no way. So maybe Lucas Patrick is maybe he's the guy to kind of give us a center that's going to really solidify that position, because boy, they need it. Sam Mustipher was not the option there last year. I think he's out of a job this year. He might be a backup.
Currently the starter at right guard. Is that right?
Well,
right
he
now,
moved to right guard. I don't know if he's starting there, but
Right,
that's
right,
where
yeah.
they moved him for the time being.
They moved him. I was just like, I'm trying to imagine the size disparity between like Lucas Patrick at center, Sam Mustipher at right guard,
yeah.
and then Kevin Jenkins at right tackle. It's just like hilarious. But oh god,
Well, we have expectations. They've been surpassed for Lucas Patrick. He didn't put physical numbers or whatever. He didn't line out his expectations. But I want to ask that of you guys. Expectations for Fields. What would be surpassing? I don't want to do the whole season because that's anything can happen, and that's not. I want to do let's say the first half of the season. So 8 games. What would be an ideal surpassing of your expectations for number 1?
I'd say, if he is around, let's say the, 1,900 yards passing mark, 14 to 15 touchdown passes with, less than half the interceptions to that, I'd call that a very good, first half of the season, considering where he was last year. I don't expect him to get there, but if he can sort of maintain like a 95 passer rating, he's efficient, he's not turning the ball over too much, and he's just, trying to keep the offense on task and not trying to do too much and put himself in danger, I think that would be called progress from where he, from how rough he had it last year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even want to give it, like, for myself, I don't want to give it a statistical prediction because my evaluation generally isn't really about stats. It's about what are you showing as a quarterback. And for me, avoiding those disastrous plays where a play action pass or a drop back becomes, should have been a 7-step drop becomes 11 steps, 17 steps backwards because you're trying to make something happen and you lose 30 yards on a sack. That cannot happen this year at all, ever. It can't. Fumbles on plays that really should not be fumbles can't happen. Like those are step 1. Those are basic items. Then is he making his progressions? Is he taking, if it's a high-low read, right? Is he taking the low at the opportune times? Is he taking the high with calculated risks? Those kinds of things I want to see, just quicker processing. I mean, that was my biggest, concern with him coming out of school. And I know that this offense is supposed to help mitigate that, but he's going to have to eventually get to a point, whether it's this year or the year after, where it's not just the scheme telling him where to go. It's him making those decisions like this on where to go with the football. I want to see that progress this year because last year it was too slow. If he's able to speed that up this year, he's making the right checks at the line. He's making the right decision quickly. He's not staring his receiver open. I would love that. I don't care if he completes half his passes, because maybe wide receivers dropped it or something happened, right? Or defense was really good. If he's making that kind of progress, that would really answer a lot of my questions towards, does he have what it takes to be a top-level quarterback in this league?
Yeah, mine's pretty simple. I want to be able to look at it with my eyes, see a quicker release point, throwing off a different foot, and no more fumbles, no more jump throws. I'm with you. I don't know if I want to put a statistical number on it, even though it's kind of unfair. I did kind of ask Eric to do that. So that's on you. You answered, so now you're on record. But to be fair, I would like to see Fields. Let's say first 8 games. I'm going to say if he's over 1,500 total yards passing, not total yards, passing yards, and double-digit touchdowns, I think that's a nice step in the right direction. And I'll take touchdowns of any measure. It doesn't have to be throwing; it could be running. But this is a passing league. I want 1,500 plus passing yards, and I think that's doable for this guy. Should his line hold up? But the more important thing is don't lead the league in fumbles lost as a quarterback. Don't lead the league in sacks. I know a lot of those sacks were pretty brutal last year. I think I just remember a few in the Cleveland game that stuck in my mind that were just awful sacks that were not the offensive line's fault. So those 2 things. Quicker release point. I want to see that. We see Rodgers do this all the time, and I know it's an unfair thing, but the quick little 2-3 step drop, zip right over the middle. Just sometimes that's all you need. And coming with, you got a Green Bay center now, and you got a Green Bay play caller. Just those quick, like if he's going to be under center, I know playing under center is very hard, and they're saying that it's one of the hardest things to do in football. We heard Eberflus say that a couple weeks ago. If that's what you got to do, though, Just that quick 2-3 step drop, zoom, right over the middle of the field. Those little things, not this wind all the way up and throw, just that's really what's going to take him to the next level.
And it's it would probably, I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers is a very difficult comparison to make in year two, and I'm guilty of those expectations sometimes, but being able to, I mean, just like exactly like kind of what you were explaining there towards the end, Kevin, like, not being like one stare. Okay, I'm going to throw it now with my long release. That just, it needs to be 1, 2, like it has to be quicker. And I thought I saw that in some cases last year, not frequently enough. I'm hoping that this scheme change does help. Now, granted, last year, last year was, I mean, it's kind of amazing. Like I thought in 2019, 2020, Nagy's scheme was still okay, still fine. 2021, I was just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like I couldn't understand anything in 2021 he was doing. So I'm certainly willing to understand that maybe there was some of it schematic there, but it kind of goes back to college, and he just needs to speed that up, and I hope he does. And if he does, I'm going to feel a lot more comfortable.
One last thing to touch on before we go over the schedule that was released a couple weeks ago. Now, Robert Quinn wants out, allegedly, reportedly. Can you blame him? He's 32. His team's not going to compete this year. Can't really blame him. I totally believe that this is true. And if so, we were calling for it a couple months ago before the draft. If you're going to trade Khalil Mack, you may as well trade Robert Quinn too. It just makes sense. It's rational. I think it makes sense.
It's one of those things. Sorry, go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
So, I believe he would like to play for a team that is competing for a championship. I 100% believe that, but I don't think he's campaigning and pushing to get his way out because he's getting paid a lot of money. He's in a pretty good situation with this defense that'll accent his talents, especially now that they're moving to a 4-3, which he fits much better. So I don't think he's pushing to get out, but I do think he would like to get out if possible to go to a team that'll give him a chance to win a championship. But the Bears aren't going to give him away. I think they're waiting for the right offer to come their way before they do unload him. And I think that it's probably going to take some time before they reach a situation where that's warranted, probably closer to the trade deadline when we know which teams are contenders and which teams are probably fading out, not going to be part of the that picture. So I think Poles is just being patient. He knows if Quinn stays healthy and continues to produce, his value is going to be high and he's going to be in demand. So he really doesn't have to rush it right now. So it's just a question of being patient and waiting for the right opportunity.
Right, and I think a trade deadline kind of makes sense, right? Because let's say this team blows everybody away and is maybe, they got all your rookies are firing on all cylinders. I mean, you got Brisker and Gordon are playing at great levels. You got a defense that's taking the ball away. You find yourself over 500. By some neck or imagination, you find yourself in that position. He's got to be playing. Robert Quinn's going to be a huge part of that. So you're in turn, you're going to be like, okay, well, let's try and get Khalil Mack value for this guy while we can. He's 32. We did hear that Brad Biggs doesn't believe he has Khalil Mack value. Right now, he certainly doesn't. But coming off an 18.5 sack season and being pretty, he's been fairly healthy. I mean, with the exception of the first year with the Bears. Before that, he's had a pretty healthy stretch here of a couple seasons. So you wait till the trade deadline, you could get a haul for him. You really could.
You could, and to Eric's point, right? They're not going to give him away because they still need to field an NFL defense.
Right.
They still need pass rush. So they are not in any rush to give him away. They are now finally going back to a scheme that he's more of a natural fit in, kind of moving back to his OG, like 43 defensive end position. So that's going to be helpful for him. From all accounts, he's actually happy in Chicago. I think he wants to stay from what I've read and understand. But would be open to the opportunity if it's a contender. And I think the Bears have maybe been looking to trade him because, to Eric's point, they do want draft picks. They do want to build this team younger. But again, they need an NFL defense, and Robert Quinn is, having a defense with Robert Quinn is better than not having a defense with Robert Quinn and shitty draft picks. So I think they're going to hold out for the right deal, hoping that he can build his value towards the middle of the season. And if they are good and they're in a legitimate position where they're able to push for a playoff spot, and other teams don't have the pressing need where they can unload him for a draft pick that is reasonable, then they'll hold on to him and they'll see what happens next year. So I think the Bears are in a good spot with Robert Quinn, and I think there's only upside here.
Do you think he gets traded, though? Do you guys think he gets traded?
I think he does.
Yes. Ultimately, I think he goes.
He's on. I mean, whether that be this year, well, yeah. Let's make it a little bit more difficult because he's on a big time contract. His age definitely does not fit this Bears window. Do you think he gets traded this season?
I think it has to be this season. If it's not this season, then I think he either stays for the rest of his contract, assuming he has a good season and is still healthy and everything. Otherwise, I think they release him next year.
It's a 5-year deal, correct?
Yeah.
Five-year deal. So this would be year 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he'll still be under contract, and you have to remember that the Bears only have 6 picks next year. So I think Poles has it in the back of his mind that if he can unload Quinn for good value, he'll absolutely do it so he can build his inventory for next year. And he's confident in his ability to build the roster with young talent. So I don't think he fears losing Robert Quinn, but he also knows Quinn's a good player, and you don't unload good players for nothing. So, he's going to be patient with this. He's seen how the Chiefs do it that way. So, I don't think he's in any sort of rush. He knows the defense is going to be good with Quinn on it. But, if the Bears end up not being good, like a lot of people predict, he'll be willing to be a seller at the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm. I do think it is good, too, that, he hasn't been public about wanting these moves. I just think, he came here because Khalil Mack was here and he saw some of these veterans on defense, right? That's too attractive not to be there. So I think with Mack gone and a defense that's getting younger, he recognizes that maybe his place is not here. And I respect that he's going about it the way he is. He's not off, he's not at OTAs right now. He's probably the most notable guy who's not there. But either way, 32 years old, see what you do this year and maybe go back to a contending team. I think that's the most viable option for him at this point. The schedule is out. I'm going to pull that up really quick. I don't know why it came up behind us there.
Can we talk about the Chargers schedule release?
Oh my God, it was so good, right? And the Bears one was so trash.
Friggin' brilliant. I loved it.
The Chargers was so good. I wish I had that video. Let me see if I can get it.
I'm so jealous of their social media team.
They're so good. It was just unbelievable. I'm pretty sure I've watched it like 11 times, and I'm pretty sure I still haven't caught all the jokes in there.
Oh, the Easter eggs are just abundant in that thing.
Well, here's the Bears schedule. I'm gonna see if I can. We'll retweet it on the Club Dub Twitter page. If you guys haven't seen it, it is absolutely hysterical what the Chargers did. The Bears one was just so bad and boring.
So bad
it was so dumb. I really whatever. So 49ers open up at Soldier Field on September 11th. That's a noon game. One thing I really like about the schedule is there's not a lot of 3 o'clock games. Eric, you and I are very similar on that. 3 o'clock games suck. So
yes.
A lot of noon games. Only one Monday Night Football game, I believe. This is just as great.
For the Patriots game?
I believe
Patriots
so,
Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
Yep.
Out in Foxborough. So
that might be a fun one.
Yeah, I know. I got a couple Patriots friends who want to travel out there for that one. Maybe I'll try and I'm going to try and get to one game. And I like to go to like one Bears game a year. They're just expensive and stuff. But 49ers to open it up. Green Bay in week 2 on Sunday Night Football. Texans, Giants, Minnesota, Commanders, New England, Dallas, Dolphins, Lions, Atlanta, Jets, Packers. Bye is week 14.
Yeah.
That's tough. Eagles, Bills, Detroit, Vikings end of year. So just on paper right away, I mean, you get the Jets and the Giants all in one year. I know the Giants had a pretty good draft and they're going to be really young, but it's pretty nice schedule right here. A lot of young quarterbacks that were even the ones that were in Fields' draft class. So it's going to be this is going to be a year for Fields to show where he sticks out in this draft class, and if he wants to make those other teams eat crow.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sorry, go ahead, Eric.
I think there are maybe 2 stretches where it can get pretty, dicey for them in terms of the teams they're going to face that could be good teams depending on how things go for them. The start is kind of tough. You got 2 playoff teams right out of the gate. And then, I think that primetime stretch with the Commanders, New England, and Dallas will be a bit difficult. And then the Packers going into the bye, and then the Eagles and Bills out of the bye. That's probably going to be, the toughest stretch for them because those are 3 pretty good teams. So other than that, there's a lot of winnable games in there if they play up to, the potential they have on this roster. So, I did a schedule prediction. I had them at 8 and 9. I think they're going to be a little bit better than last year because the schedule is a little bit more manageable, but they're still not going to make the playoffs. But, a lot of people are predicting doom and gloom. I don't think it's going to be that bad unless injuries hit, in which case it's probably going to be that bad. But, all things considered, I think it's a manageable enough schedule, and it'll be, a slight improvement on what we saw last year.
Kevin, can you pull that up again?
Yeah, I got you.
A few quirks in here that I thought were interesting. One of them I think was the Bears end the season with 4 out of their 5 last remaining games in at Soldier Field. But it's like all against teams that don't mind cold weather.
Right. Yeah.
Packers, Eagles, Bills, Vikings, they're all cold weather teams. So
and their lone road game is at Detroit, who would have been good to face in cold weather.
Oh, Vikings play a dome, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. They're probably practicing, or they're just living in Minnesota. It doesn't affect them too much. And then they're the teams that would have been affected, Miami is coming in November where it's nice, and
Atlanta,
exactly.
Come on,
Houston, man. Houston's in September. Come on. But and San Francisco obviously to start the year. So I think that from a weather perspective, they don't really get a lot of benefit here. For anyone that's interested in the Arlington Heights Stadium, maybe this is your argument for bear weather not being a thing. We'll see. But I think this is a very interesting schedule. Quite frankly, a lot of quarterbacks on this schedule, opposing quarterbacks, are those that you hope Fields is better than at the end of the year, right? You have Tua, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, Davis Mills. I mean, if Fields can't prove himself to be better than those guys at the end of this year, then the Bears are oh, what are we kind of doing here? So you really hope that he does show out and improve.
And this would sort of justify Ryan Poles holding back on investing too much in the offense because he wants to see what Fields can do. If Fields can improve despite not having the ideal situation around him, then he's like, okay, we might have our guy. Let's go all in on him next year when we have money, first-round pick, all that sort of stuff. So he's sort of hedging his bets, which is actually pretty smart.
Exactly.
So,
and the best quarterbacks do that.
Yes, exactly. So, they find a way to improve regardless. So.
Yeah, I got them at 7 and 10. The only thing that really matters to me this year is sticking out against those young quarterbacks, specifically the two in your draft, which was Zach Wilson and then Trey Lance. Should Trey Lance win that starting job?
Mac Jones too. Don't forget Mac Jones.
Davis Mills. So you're right.
There's 4 of them. You got 4. That should be fun.
So I like Davis Mills looked pretty damn good. Especially towards the end of last year, a lot of I always forget he was in that draft class because he was a 4th or 5th rounder,
second rounder, I think. But
really, he was that early.
Second rounder, but he was written off by a lot of draft pundits who were like, "Yeah, Davis Mills, who cares?" But he probably was the best looking rookie, quite honestly. Mac Jones was highly overrated.
He was a 3rd round. Yeah, he was a 3rd round pick.
3rd rounder. Okay.
Yeah, I thought he was 4th. All right.
Yeah, so 3rd rounder, but I mean, look at his situation in Houston. He had nothing, and he played well. So
yeah, he did pretty well. Yeah, he did have nothing over there.
I'm telling you right now, Mac Jones is probably going to disappoint a lot of people this year because they lost Josh McDaniels, and I think they're underplaying how big of a loss that actually is for that offense.
Huge. It's enormous. How do they not have an offensive coordinator at this point of the year?
I think Belichick's ideal solution would have been to bring back Bill O'Brien, who's in Alabama right now, but unfortunately it's kind of a lateral move, offensive coordinator to offensive coordinator. So I think Bill's just like, you know what? I'm just going to stay here if it's the same job. We're probably going to win a lot more games, maybe a championship. So I don't blame him for that. And Belichick's like, well, what do I do now? So, they're struggling to come up with options. And right now it's, Matt Patricia, Joe Judge, guys who have never called plays on the offensive side in their lives. So, that's a pretty dicey situation.
Listen, I think that even if Trey Lance, I mean, he's got to win the starting job this year. They got to admit that they screwed up the pick, right? I mean,
if he doesn't play and he's the number 3 overall pick, I mean, how can you say you didn't screw it up? I mean, considering.
So I'm going to say Trey Lance is going to be their week 1 starter. I think that's going to be a bold prediction. I think Fields is going to be better than him. Now, I don't think I watched a couple games with Zach Wilson last year, and he had, nothing either. This year, he's got a new revamped offense. He's got Garrett Wilson coming in. The jury is still out on him. I think the jury is still out on all these guys. They only had 1 year. But I watched a lot of Mac Jones last year because there was Patriots this, Patriots that. Tom Brady, white quarterback. They look the same. Oh, my God, Bill Belichick's going to make this guy great again. It's like, I don't think so, man. Justin Fields is better than Mac Jones, and in my eyes, like, it's honestly not really that close. But because of the Patriots' strong defense last year and taking the ball over and turning that into short fields and having a pretty strong offensive line, that made Jones look great. And guess what? Football's a team game. I get that, and you got 22 guys out there all vouching for the same thing, but he walked into a much more favorable situation. We've all said that, but if you put Fields in that situation, I mean, come on. I mean, we all saw the athletic difference between Justin Fields and Mac Jones physically. I mean, it's obvious that Fields is a much better athlete and football player than Mac Jones. So, will that show up on the field though? That's a game circled on my calendar, even though I don't like Monday Night Football. Maybe I'll like it a little bit more now that Joe and Troy are in the booth. Because Monday Night Football these last couple of years has just been unwatchable. Awful. But Joe and Troy are great. Joe Buck is, for my money, the best announcer in the game today. So maybe I'll watch a little bit more for that. But either way, this one is circled for me because I want to see Fields really show that he's better than Mac Jones, and that really shouldn't have been, because the Bears were so bad and he was in and out of the lineup. Who's our starting quarterback? Is it Andy? Is it Fields? He didn't have to go through any of that. Mac didn't have to go through any of that. So now with a full year of Fields, this is his team. This is his offense. That's going to be a fun one for me. So
I have a lot of these games scheduled, and I know that these opponents are not necessarily the best. I mean, you're looking at this as an easy schedule, especially when you look at the teams that are on the roster, the opposing quarterbacks. But I have a few games that I'm really looking forward to. Obviously, the Packers games. Primetime at Lambeau is like routine at this point.
Yeah, it's going to happen every year. Everybody will turn out for that one.
Exactly. I'm quite looking forward to obviously that the Patriots game, like you mentioned. I love Boston, and Foxborough is fun. But
have you been to Foxborough? Have you been to Gillette?
Yeah,
that's awesome. We should go to a game at Soldier or something. The show too. I know Stevie was talking about that.
How about the I think what week is what date is the Houston game?
Fourth week.
Pull it up.
Third week. I'm sorry. Third week.
Ah, shit. Okay. I really wanted to go to that one because it's a low key, very interesting, just like storyline, like local storyline, right? Like you have Lovey returning, you have Davis Mills versus Fields, you have, all that stuff. So that would be very fun, I think, for me. But that is my anniversary weekend, so I will be in trouble.
Well, you could.
Like the Brown game last year.
Why not get tickets for both of you? Hey, happy anniversary. Here's the Soldier. Here's the 2-mile walk to Soldier Field through Millennium Park.
She would murder me. First of all, second of all, maybe it's better that I don't watch because last year was the Browns game, the day of the anniversary. So maybe it's better I don't watch.
I think I've been on. I think when we went on after that one, that was like the worst Bears game I think I've ever watched in my life, and I think I'm pretty confident. I've seen a couple humdingers, but that one was. If we have to watch anything like that this year, I might resign and give my position to somebody else.
Watch out for that Commanders game. I know it's at Soldier Field, but man, that defensive line. If the Bears' offensive line isn't meshing by that point, you hope it is. It's 6 weeks into the season.
Oh yeah.
But my God, that defensive front is deadly.
Yeah, but they for some reason think that they can go with Carson Wentz, so
Sam Howell's doing that job.
I'm telling you right now, Tyler Heineke was not bad for them last year or the year before that.
Yeah,
maybe he's not a starting quarterback, but why are you giving up assets for Carson Wentz? Carson Wentz will give the Bears a chance to win that game, guaranteed. He'll throw.
If you look at their offensive line, it's not nearly as strong as it was, a couple years ago. Brandon Scherf is gone. Trent Williams is long gone. So, I think they might be not as strong up front as they might think they are. So that might be an opportunity to really get after Wentz.
You got Chase coming off an ACL injury too. So Yeah, that'll be a good one. But yeah, I got the game of the year for me is that, besides the Packers, you want to beat them at least once. Is that New England game on Monday Night Football? That is going to be, because I look at the rest of these, and the 49ers will be a good one week one. Giants, Jets, I don't really care. Eagles is going to be another good one for me because I said last year that I'm a fan of what they're doing there. Vikings see them every year. Detroit's gonna, Detroit, they got some good new rookies this year. They might actually be worth watching, but it's that New England game that's gonna be. You don't see the Patriots a lot.
Yep.
Two young quarterbacks in the same draft, drafted very close, snitch to each other. That's gonna be one I'm really looking forward to. So I got 7-10. You have 8-9. Drew,
I have 7-10. Two more things.
That's
Extremely excited to watch Josh Allen come to Soldier Field. I hope
God.
snowing that day, it would be just amazing sight. And then second thing, you guys aren't excited about the Spider-Man GIF games?
what one's that?
Atlanta.
What? Spider-Man kid. Well, I don't get it.
Because Atlanta signs all the Bears players.
Oh, okay.
You guys aren't excited about that?
Oh, I'm loving it.
Dude,
Bring it on.
Somebody had a tweet. One of the Bears guys had a tweet out about all of the past guys from like the last 5 years that are now in the Falcons organization. There was at least 7 or 8 guys.
Oh yeah,
players and coaches alike, like all total.
I think the roster is like 10 to 15 deep right now of former Bears.
Whatever. Yeah.
Crazy.
What about? I wonder if Marquise Goodwin will end up over there too.
No, he just signed the Seahawks. He just signed with the Seahawks.
Seahawks today? Okay, good for him. I liked Marquise Goodwin. Another, he just had a congrats to Marquise too. I believe they had their second child over the last couple of weeks, so congrats to him. And awesome. I did find the photo.
Heck yeah!
Back when this was the last time I think the Bears' offensive line was just like very, very strong.
I love this.
These two were Kyle Long, one of my favorite Bears of all time. And Josh sitting there on the left. It's just iconic. Such a great costume idea.
Perfect.
But so 7-10, 7-10, 8-9. I think that's where I think there's some national media that has Bears even lower than that. I've seen, articles, Eric, that you put out on sportsmockery.com of they're going to have the number 1 overall pick next year. I don't think that's the case. I think they could end up top 5. I think there's a legit argument for that, but not number 1. They're not the worst team in the league. So
if you look at history, you need to go at least only 3 wins in order to have a shot at the first pick, and it's usually 2 or fewer lately. You got to be like 2-14, 2-15. It's crazy, how bad you have to be to get the number 1 pick these days. Yeah. So I don't think the Bears roster is weak enough. I don't think their coaching is bad enough in order to get that. They still might struggle, but I don't think they're going to be nearly bad enough to get a number 1 pick.
Yeah. And look, if the Bears are in that conversation, then something went really wrong with Justin Fields this year, and they have every opportunity to move on, take Bryce Young or someone else next year and kind of restart. But look, I don't, and if everything goes right, if Fields and Getsy really mesh and this offense takes off to the point where they should be beating some of these teams. These teams are not very good, and these opposing quarterbacks are not very good. If the Bears offense takes the sleep that it could, they really should be competitive, if not winning a lot of these games. But yes, there's projection involved. You have to assume everything's going to go right, which it won't. But there is opportunity on the schedule. That doesn't mean the Bears should go all in and make trades at the trade deadline to try to win. But I think the Bears have an opportunity to be a lot of fun to watch this season. Maybe get some more primetime game opportunities and flexing in if they're 5-5 after 10 weeks, like in the hunt, like who doesn't want to watch the Bears in those cases? So I'm just excited for a fun schedule. Hopefully watching some improvement. This team hopefully becoming fun to watch, and with the upside of maybe being relevant for 15, 16 weeks.
Certainly so. Well, one thing you can also watch is post June 1st, there's going to be some pretty big names. There always is every year flying around. They'll have the Bears will have a chance to get some more offensive linemen in there, maybe some other guys that choose to sign with them. You're not going to see any big high-profile cuts going here. They're going to go to contenders, but the Bears might be able to go out and get a couple offensive linemen, a couple guards, and things like that. Again, that's coming up to the post June cut deadline is really it's a big week in the NFL. So that's when we saw a lot of significant cuts over these last couple of years. So again, if you enjoy listening to us, you can follow us on Twitter at the @ClubDub_podcast, and we are presented by Sports Mockery. Also, give Sports Mockery a like and a follow on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can follow all of us right now in the left-hand corner. You see our Twitter handles there. Any last words before we get out of here, guys? Otherwise, we'll be back probably next week.
Next string of practices are coming up soon, so keep an eye out for those. There's probably going to be some good stuff on YouTube as well. I just heard the new episode of 1920 Football Drive is coming out, so there's going to be some really juicy clips in there, I'm sure. So a lot of stuff to look forward to in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
And just my bi-weekly public service announcement to Bears fans: just relax, guys. Just relax. There's so much time until the season starts, until training camp starts. Just relax. I've been on a pretty decent
your expectations
the last week. Exactly. I've been on a little bit of a Twitter break the last week or so, week and a half. It's been great. It's been fun.
I was gonna say I haven't seen you a whole lot. I haven't seen you very active on there.
It's been nice.
Good. I can't get away from it. I'm addicted. So.
I've been checking it a little bit, but I haven't been posting much. I'm just like, I'm gonna calm down. I'm gonna let the wave ride, and it's been fine. I'm asking Bears Twitter, just relax. It's going to be okay. Just relax.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us here on the Club Dub podcast. I got to get to a softball game. I was 5 for 5 last game, so I'm hoping to keep that going.
All right.
Yeah, we'll keep it going. I'll have updates every so often. I'll keep the updates going on Twitter. You can follow us on there.
Kevin,
follow me on there.
Over here.
Yeah, maybe you guys can come out and watch whenever you want. Mozart Park.
Heck yeah.
Near the Avondale neighborhood. But anyway, that's going to do it for us here on the Club Dub podcast presented by SportsMockery.com. We'll be back at it again next week or the week after that with more Bears coverage. Till then, keep following us on Twitter and follow all of Eric's podcasts on there as well, or his articles. You can catch all of those. So we will talk to you guys next week. Peace.